Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to the Free Think Dojo. Most of the time, I typically like to look into other people's situations. Like, I like to step into their shoes, you know what I mean, and try to really see what they're seeing from, their own two eyes. I feel like that type of mentality, I guess that's empathy or whatever, it really does help me kind of take a step back before I approach somebody about a situation or an issue, but it also kind of helps me keep a level head. Once you kind of start to see their perspective, I feel like it's a lot easier to approach, people about a certain, action that they took or something they said or whatever it may be. It just helps overall kind of tackling a hard situation once you actually kind of understand the root of it all. But there's some things in life that even if you do step in other people's shoes, you really, can have a hard time understanding why they want to do it a certain way. And with today's world, I think one of the biggest things that has been popping up recently is a lot of greed, a lot of hunger for money and money and money. And everybody wants to have this, some sort of financial power, not really for themselves anymore. It's really over other people. They want to have this, this greed to really fuel them because they feel like that's how you become happy in life. I don't know how many times I have, seen someone close to me or someone on the internet or whatever, turning a hobby of theirs or something that's super simple into like a money game, right? They try to turn into a business, try to get money. And, everybody's seeing ads galore these days. So they're also learning that type of strategy from these bigger corporations. Everything has an ad nowadays. Nothing is going to be, uh, you're not going to find a piece of content that's not going to be monetized. Now obviously there's a lot of things happening right this minute with YouTube itself and other big companies of just trying to really push products. This is what you want, look at this. And honestly, it's becoming way overwhelming, and at one point I didn't even think it could be this overwhelming. Like, take a look back a couple of years or even a year ago when a lot of these things were kicking off with, greed becoming a factor with a lot of companies again and it becoming in the headlines of news again. And, at that time, you really thought there's no way that it could get worse than this. Like, this is the peak greed of these people. And, I don't think it will get worse. I think it'll only get better. My goodness, were we wrong? I mean, we were so off. It keeps getting more and more and more. And it makes you kind of start thinking about, like, where is the ceiling for all of this? Like, when is it going to end? Now, I don't have an answer for that, but, back to kind of stepping into people's shoes and looking at different perspectives, like, if I was in their shoes, I don't even understand how they would go about something like this other than, wanting to make shareholders happy and just make more money to, get as much as they can, right? That's really the only perspective I can see. And it's only been proven right with all these new ads coming out and all these price increases happening. And honestly, it's unbelievable. I'm not a perfect person. I've made mistakes. I'm not going to say I'm, a good person. But what I can see is like basic morality. I feel like it's like lost. I think it's gone. And I think greed has somewhat become like a new type of hobby. Like, greed has become so crazy nowadays that people don't even think about it anymore. They don't think about, oh, am I being greedy? Or, oh, maybe this is too much. Maybe I'm pushing it. Like, nobody asks those questions anymore. And I'm not even just talking about like larger corporations or businesses that have shareholders and all that. I'm talking about like regular people. As I mentioned before, like, I've seen people turn their own hobbies into a business. And once you do that, like, your hobby is gone. I'm sorry to say that, but like, I work in the martial arts field. I don't actually work, but I train in it. I'm a very involved in my community with martial arts, and a lot of the people that I know are turning that into like a training business. I've considered it at times in my life. If it happens, great. If it doesn't, I'm not going to really lose sleep over it because I know that my hobby is more important than turning it into a money-making machine. Now, I'm not saying that my, people I know that I mentioned are, not happy with the money they're making or happy that they're doing this as a job, because I'm sure they would love doing that other than like a 9 to 5 desk job in the corporate world, right? And I totally get that. But I think it becomes a little bit of a bigger issue, especially in today's world. Because once you lose your hobby and it all becomes about money again, like you're in the competition with everybody now. Like once you turn your hobby into a money market and you try to turn it into your job or your business, like you are now in the rat race with every single person these days also trying to do the same thing. Like I remember when I first started, martial arts, or even if we think about it more of like a simple hobby like video games, right? I knew people growing up that were like, oh, I want to go become a video game developer when I get older or something like that. But a lot of people just played games because they liked to play games. Like back then, there was no esports. There was barely any major league gaming or whatever. We just played games because it was fun. We didn't think about wanting to turn it into a hobby or become an influencer. We just wanted to, do it because it brought us peace. It kind of took us out of reality and let us just have fun. But now that just doesn't seem to be the case, And for all the people that have become successful with, something that once was a hobby or just something where they were doing without getting paid that they enjoyed, like that's great. We all want to achieve that at some point. But I feel like it's becoming so much of a norm these days that it's like, a lot of the message is, if you're not making money with what you're doing, then you're wasting your time. Or if you provide a service to somebody, you should never do it for free. Like, yes, as you get older, you obviously want to, be very wary of your time and the effort you're putting into things. Because, if you don't have a job and you just have a hobby that you're putting all your time into, then yeah, you probably want to try and make money off of that, right? But I think it's become so much more these days. I don't really know what it is. I think it, obviously is the state of the world and all that stuff, but I know a lot of people are afraid, especially with like job markets and things like that. And I think everybody wants to turn something that maybe they like into, something that they can do full time. There's that saying that goes around of, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. I think that's great if you have that opinion of life. I think it's a little outdated in my opinion because work is work. So I don't know. It's so crazy because I think I'm just, a lot of us are getting overwhelmed at this point with the constant push for, consumerism and a lot of these ads, coming out recently and all that. I mean, I can tell you I'm overwhelmed. I mean, just being on YouTube and social media, I've thought about taking a break from it just because it's getting so much, right? Or at least viewing it, consuming it. I think the most frustrating part of it all, though, is, money is the only topic of conversation, it seems like nowadays. It's very rare to find somebody that does something because they enjoy it. And I think once that starts to become a very scarce thing in this world, I think we're definitely in a bad place, personally. But I don't know. I think where we're all getting to here is, this push for how do we survive? And I think a lot of what is being pushed these days is you have to have some type of, side hustle or something else to back you up just to stay alive. And I think once we are, now getting to that point, and I think it's getting a little out of control with how we're being taught from these bigger companies and how we see all these influencers and everything pushing this so much, it almost makes you worried of like, what's going to happen to just, hobby? What's going to happen to people just enjoying their lives for the sake of it, right? But it also just makes you question, like, is money really the only thing people care about anymore? Is that really all that they're fighting for? Is that all that we are worth nowadays, is just, the dollar signs? I don't know. Something to think about. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I feel like everybody obviously is running into this these days because it's constantly be throwing in front of us. But I really hope there's some people out there that still have like just passions and hobbies and really just enjoy life for what it is. And, how are we all dealing with this? Let me know. Anyways, I definitely wanted to get this off my chest. I think it's just very present right now. So appreciate you sticking around in the Free Think Dojo with me today. Once again, remember to subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Share with your friends to grow the dojo. And I will talk to you guys next time.